Good afternoon from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? No, good afternoon this morning. Don't up. Oh dear. Welcome to Complex PTSD. It's definitely afternoon in Brisbane, Australia. We're in spring, so the afternoons are nice and bright. And so I thought I'd pop by today because I've had on my heart to share something with you that's really important, but I've also had to go and do some research around it as well. Now, I wanted to share with you some of the insight into why I had to leave my marriage, why I had to leave the kids' dad, and why I had to take the children away. But I didn't want to present it in a way that was, it's all his fault or it's all my fault. I wanted to be able to bring the awareness to you of the reasons and the choices and decisions I had to make, but I also wanted it to be balanced for you so that in your situation, you can put practical information into place and you can also go, okay, I've also got some more information where I can go and look within myself in these areas and say, where can I grow and learn if I'm not ready to leave that situation? So for me, this is many years ago now. So we're looking at, I don't know, I didn't actually add it up. So let's say ballpark at least 17 years ago when I had to make the decision to leave. And it came down to not about him or not about me, not about our relationship per se. And our relationship hadn't been the best for a long time, but I had come to a place of understanding where I knew that he didn't understand me. He didn't understand when I wanted to talk about how I feel or what I wanted. And I'd come into the acceptance of, well, that if that's not there, then there are other things that I can do in my life. So I used to have my own business, helping people, teaching people about how to go within and, develop their strength from their soul, which is my authentic self course in the academy. But I also developed outside, not habits, hobbies too, so that I had lots of outlet for myself with friendships and interests, so that when I was at home, the fact that I couldn't share how I felt with my spouse wasn't like this big ogre in the room or unspoken, you know, whatever it is in the room. I have lost all my English today. But basically, I didn't bring the fact that I couldn't speak to him about how I felt emotionally into the marriage and make it be a big infesting wound. What I did do though is focus a lot on what my children needed as well. So even though I had my business and my outside interests, I also knew that it was really, really important that what happened at home, the kids were okay and they were having a healthy, happy life. And when that ceased to happen, when their dad, his anger overspilled, and I spoke to him about it and said I was leaving, because he wouldn't control his anger and he kept taking it out on the kids. He said, can we get back together? And I said, sure, I love this man. I'm not going to run away if he's going to get help. I said, as long as you get help, then we can stay together. I'm happy, The last thing I've ever wanted in my life is to be divorced, okay? It litters my family, and I went into my marriage with the most information I possibly could at the time back then, hoping that I would never, ever, ever have to get divorced. I didn't want it for my children. I'd been through it myself, and as had the generations before me as well. So it's not something that you go into lightly. However, when he told me he would get help, then he didn't get help, and he lasted 12 months without being angry. And then 4 weeks later came in and started yelling because there was plastic bags on the floor because I'd been out shopping and the plastic bags weren't in anyone's road. The cats are just little kittens had been playing with them. I went, here we are. We're going to go down this road again of anger. And I knew then that nothing would change, that he wouldn't choose to seek help, that he didn't see that he had a problem. And I had to choose to leave for the sake of my children. I've looked back over the years and I know if it was just me, I never would have left. I would not have left that marriage because I'd made it possible for me to be in that marriage and have my needs met in community, in my work, and lots of other ways. However, when it came to my children, I knew that I did not want them to grow up believing that being angry was the only way to solve problems, or being angry was the only way to express how I feel, and so on and so forth. So I had to make that call to leave. Now, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know how it would happen. I just said, that's it. We can't do this anymore. Okay. And it broke my heart and broke all our hearts. But at the end of the day, he continued to choose to be angry. He would turn up smiling and happy to get the kids and get the kids in the car and then start yelling at them. I said to him before I left that if he didn't seek help for his anger, then it was going to continue to eat him from the inside out, because he already had bowel cancer, secondary liver, and he wouldn't do anything about it. He wouldn't seek help. So it broke all our hearts. He is deceased, and before he died, he rang me and he said, "You were right." And I said, "Right about what?" He said, "What you said to me before you left has happened." And I sat there scrambling, trying to remember what I said. And it took me a bit to work out and remember what I said about how if he didn't get help for the anger, okay, because anger is something that they hold internally. And I knew that it came from his family of origin time. But it doesn't matter how much I know. If he doesn't want to know, then I can't change him. He's an adult. He has to make those decisions. So when he said that to me, I burst into tears, because for him, it was like saying to me, "Yeah, you were right." But for me, it was never about being right. It doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong. What matters is that you want to be well. And I just burst into tears because I knew then that he wouldn't be with us much longer. And I was like, you still don't understand that it's not about being right or wrong. It's about getting help for the pain that's inside of you. That was the most important thing to me. And then I just didn't know what to say. It was very sad for me, but I did raise the kids. People have asked me about, how I raise my kids, which I'll do another video on. But in respect to their dad, when we left, I said to them, "You will always, always love your dad. You might not always agree with how he behaves or how he treats you, but you will always love your dad." And I reiterated that over the years, that no matter what, you will always love your dad. Because if our children can maintain that connection with the fact that they love their dad, and they can separate his behaviour from how they feel, and they can look at, yes, dad's, behaving badly, or dad's not behaving in a healthy way, then they don't take on that behaviour themselves. Josh, my eldest child, will be the first, and I actually should get him to talk with you as well, about how him and I navigated his teenage years, because he was the one that was more like his dad at that time, and we had to go through a whole process of me being firm and strong that, "No, Josh, that's not how you're feeling. You're angry and it shows on your face." And we had to go through a whole process of learning and with each other, and teaching about emotions and what's happening for him internally. And I can honestly say that from there, as he's grown into an adult who's nearly 28, he has continued to do this internal work, and he's the most kind, gentle young man. And we laugh now, okay? We laugh about all the challenges that we've had over the years. And it's always been this two backwards and forwards. And he has gone and sought answers. And he has gone and continues to have a male mentor, because he knows that that's what he needs as a man, okay? Mum can do so much, but mum can't do it all, especially with young men. Our young men need to have male mentors, and I couldn't be prouder of him that he says, look, this isn't who I am. I don't like this behaviour. I want to understand it more, and I want to be a good, healthy young man for when I have children. And if there's anything that my children gain from all of it is that the continued understanding that I made that decision to leave because I did not want the intergenerational trauma that had been passed down for decades to continue on to them. I wanted for them to be able to stand up and make choices for themselves. And so all of them are very deep thinkers of varying degrees, but they all think things through. They all understand that there's more to life than just, having a home, having a family, etc. They all know that we're here to contribute in some way, but that unfolds over time. But it's really important that what we do behind closed doors and four walls, makes how we are and how we interact in life and with other people, it makes it really important. It makes it important that we do continue to look at it and we do continue to learn and grow and take in new information so we can have healthy outcomes with our kids if we communicate. We communicate at their level at any given time, and we also teach them it's okay to be wrong. That being wrong isn't necessarily about being wrong. It's about learning what I need to know. What is it that I don't know so that I can go and learn what it is I need to know. And it's a whole different chat show then when we're raising our kids. So for me, during this whole process of this week of sitting down and really contemplating and praying about how am I going to address my side of this as well, I actually woke up this morning, and so I'm going through understanding the deeper parts of an abandonment wound, which in previous videos I've explained to you about how my grandmother, so my mother's mother, her and three sisters were abandoned by their mother, like in the middle of nowhere, and their whole family got split up. Then my grandmother actually hated my mother. My mother's deceased, okay, because she carried that all her life. But I came out of my family with my mum that even though we didn't have that connection and there were incidences in my life of abandonment, I came out of all of that going, no matter what, I'm going to raise my kids knowing that they are loved and they belong. So when I woke up this morning thinking about what I can share with you, I went, right, what does this, where's this going? And then all of a sudden I realised this whole vision came in that my paternal grandmother, okay, so my dad's mum, she was abandoned too. She, and I'd never even thought of this, she was raised in an orphanage, in a paid position in an orphanage because her mum couldn't look after her on her own and work. And her dad was an alcoholic. Last known address was a gutter up in far north Queensland somewhere. Obviously, he's been and gone a long time. And then my nan, she married an alcoholic and he took off. And so these abandonment patterns have been coming down through the family. And when I just sat there in shock this morning, to be honest, just wrapping my mind around how both sides of my family tree have dropped this abandonment wound in my lap, so to speak, and it's so unconscious, all right? It's handed down and it's implied, okay? It's implicit. It's not something that we go, oh yeah, look, this is what's happened, I understand it all. It doesn't work like that with an abandonment wound. So then when I wrap my mind around, both sides of my family tree have had this abandonment wound, I then remembered that I had a dream this morning where I faced the fact that mum didn't love me. Now, I love my mum. She went through a really hard time in hard times when there was no help for single mothers and at a time when single women still could not sign on a loan, okay? So they had to have a husband to sign on a loan. So After my dad left the first time and came back, she said, you can come back provided we get a house. So I got a house, so she had someone else to sign. And then when he messed up again, of course, it was over, but she had given us a home. Now, of course, when it comes to the abandonment wound, it's not about what's around you. It's about the internal programming that we get from our family. So what I did was, in order to give you information about what I'm working on and what I'm wrapping my mind around understanding, I actually have had this book on my desk for some time, and it's called The Emotionally Absent Mother, and it's by Jasmine Lee Corey. Okay, so I'll just put that there. And when I opened it this morning, I went, right, okay, what is it that we need to know to work on? Now, she's got the messages that we get from an emotionally, when a good mother's messages are absent. So what are we left with that we can look at and begin to resolve? So when a good mother is absent, we don't get the message that I'm glad you're here, okay? So then we can conclude it's better that we're not here. We don't get the message I see you, okay? So then it can lead to a feeling of us being invisible, and we can walk through life with a level of uncertainty, okay? So when a good mother is absent, we don't get the message, you are special to me. When we don't feel special to our parents, we don't feel cherished for who we are. And we may even think that mummy might like it better if I was somebody else. Okay? We don't get the message that I respect you. And we don't feel that our capacities, boundaries, and preferences are respected. And we don't learn to respect these for ourselves. So in that instance, think about how many of us have to go through as adults and learn what boundaries are and everything else that goes with it. With the absence of sufficient loving, we may conclude, I am unlovable as I am. And we can turn ourselves inside out trying to be loved. Now, I know this from experience as well, because my mother never once said, I love you. It was just beyond her realm to be able to do that. So we've got to look at, am I conforming to what others want me to be, or am I learning how to love myself as I am, as who I am, inside, outside, and everywhere? We don't learn, she never gives us the message that our needs are important to her. And then we get a sense that mother wants to meet, we don't get a sense that mother wants to meet our needs, and so we can end up believing my needs are shameful or a burden. I shouldn't have needs. I know I've struggled with that for a very long time, is accepting that I have needs and that I always know I can meet them, but actually accepting that I feel that I have a need for something is really hard for me. I do work better towards it than I have been, but still got a journey to go. Without a sense that our mum is here for us, we feel alone. I spent my young years, like before school, even with chronic loneliness, and now it all makes sense. And we get left with the sense that I need to raise myself, and we can become very independent because of that, because we've not had the experience that we can have an interdependent relationship. We don't get the message that I'll keep you safe. So without the sense of protection, we can feel overwhelmed by life and conclude that the world is dangerous. I use the affirmation, I am safe, every time that fear gets triggered in my brain and starts off the response throughout my body, the freeze response, then I have to do the work to get off the freeze response. So our brain gets programmed that way. So we need to really sit down and work with I am safe and work out what that means for us as well. You can rest in me. When being with mother is not a safe place to be ourselves, we miss an important aspect of connection. Being with mother then becomes a time we need to stay alert or perform, and we never feel fully at home with her. I know for me, I learnt just to stay out of the road. That was the message I got. So there was no learnt connection. So one of the things that I will need to do is work into my life what that feeling of connection means for me now as an adult. All right. When we didn't get the message, I delight in you, we may conclude, I am a burden that nobody wants. I wish I could disappear. I shouldn't take up so much space. We shrink in ourselves and learn to hide our light. Well, I can say that. I'm pretty much sure I'm covering that one effectively. So I want you to think about it. I will put the 10 messages in an infographic for you, but I also want you to think about what was the one that stood out for you and what's the next step in your recovery you want to work on so that you can feel connection, you can feel that you belong, and be aware of when you're saying to yourself, I don't belong, they're not seeing me, okay? Because we have to call that as not true. We have to see that other people see us so that we can do the recovery work and take our rightful place in the world and step up and do what we're all called to do. I hope that helps. Again, this is the book, okay, The Emotionally Absent Mum by Jasmine Lee Court, and it's got lots and lots of practical stuff in it to help you work on recovery. So take it with you to your trauma recovery coach, take it with you to your therapist, and start working on structures and strategies, because for complex PTSD, we need new structures, new strategies, new education and understanding so that we can begin to keep recovering into full and a healthy way of life. Okay, thanks for listening, and I hope you have the most wonderful day. Bye for now.